All right, so what we know is that when we do endurance and strength together, we're going to decrease the amount of strength gains and the increase in muscle mass that we see with resistance training alone. So now what I want you to do is I want you to go back in your mind to that time when you understood how we build strength at the molecular level. Remember our resistance exercise and our amino acids coming in, they're going to come together and they're going to activate this protein mTOR, specifically mTOR complex 1. And what that does is that's going to increase our ability to make proteins by activating protein synthesis, turning on the existing ribosomes. And the other thing that mTOR does is it increases our capacity to make protein by making more ribosomes. So mTOR is going to both activate the existing ribosomes and make new ribosomes. The result is we're going to get an increase in protein synthesis that's going to last a long time after we do our resistance exercise. And what that's going to allow us to do, remember the bank account analogy, that means our income is going up and our expenditures is staying the same. Our muscle mass is getting bigger. Our bank account is getting bigger. We are getting flush. All right? We're getting swole. This is great. All's good. And if we look at mTORC1 activation after resistance exercise, as I said, 1.5 hours, way up. 3 hours, even more. 6 hours, it's still up. 12 hours, 18 hours, even this, where it's at 12 hours, it's still fivefold up, or 18 hours, it's still fivefold higher than control, but it's a lot lower than it used to be. So mTOR is on for at least 18 hours, all right? So resistance exercise, we're going to activate mTOR complex 1 for like 12 to 18 hours. Cool, that's awesome. That's great. So now, how does this work for endurance? Well, endurance exercise, remember, when we do low intensity exercise, we get a long-term activation of calcium that activates CAM kinase that gives us more PGC1 alpha, and that gives us more mitochondria, blood vessels, and fat oxidation enzymes. When we do high intensity exercise, we break down ATP faster than we can produce ATP. So we then start doing this ADP myokinase reaction where we get more ATP and it generates AMP, and that AMP is going to go on to activate the AMP activated protein kinase. When kinase is active, it activates PGC1 alpha, it increases PGC1 alpha, and that gives us more mitochondria, blood vessels, and fat oxidation enzymes. So when we do low intensity, we get calcium, CAM kinase, PGC1 alpha. When we do high intensity, we get AMP kinase, PGC1, and we get both of them giving us the same kind of endurance adaptations. All right. So whether we do long, slow endurance or high intensity endurance, we're still going to get PGC1 alpha activation. All right. So then how long are these systems on for? Unlike mTOR or unlike our resistance exercise components, when we're doing endurance exercise, we're going to quickly activate things during the exercise bout. And then within 30 minutes, it's going to be back down to normal. And by about 3 hours, everything's completely normal again. It's as if you never did the endurance exercise at all. You've started something happening, but you don't need the signals, AMP kinase and CAM kinase, to be on anymore. So here's the analogy. If you are doing resistance exercise, it's like taking a big, huge rock and on a slope that's just a little bit, and then it goes downhill. So if you push it a little bit and you get up enough energy, the rock will start going downhill, and it's going to keep going downhill for a long, long time. For endurance exercise, what you're doing is you're pushing that rock up the hill. You're pushing up you're pushing the rock up the hill, and as long as you're going, the rock is going up the hill. But as soon as you stop, it's not going to keep going forward very long. It's going to stop pretty quickly. So endurance exercise, you're pushing the rock uphill. In resistance exercise, you push the rock over the hill, and it's going downhill now. All right? So endurance exercise, the signal is on for a very short period of time. Strength exercise, the signal is on for a very long period of time. Now here's the interesting part. When we do endurance exercise, you remember that metabolic stress? The metabolic stress that was going to activate AMP kinase, the metabolic stress that's causing the adaptation, it's also going to inhibit our ability for amino acids to activate mTOR, and it's going to inhibit our ability to increase the amount of little machines to build proteins. So it's actually going to limit our ability to turn on mTOR. So the metabolic stress of the exercise, the calories that you're using, the amount of ATP that you're consuming, because protein synthesis is a metabolically costly process, the amount of energy that you're using in order to do your endurance exercise is going to actually compete with the ability to increase protein synthesis after your resistance exercise. All right? So here's what we have. We have a situation where we have a very short-lived thing, this metabolic stress, and a very long-lived thing, this mTOR activity. So what you then do is you say, oh, if this is the way it's going to be, there's a couple of simple things that I can do to overcome this. The first one is this amino acid component. So if metabolic stress makes it harder for amino acids to turn on mTOR, all I have to do is eat a little bit more amino acids and I can turn on mTOR. And if metabolic stress is going to increase or block the ability to increase that exercise capacity, turn on mTOR for a long time, then what we can do is we can just do it so that we do this first. So we do our endurance exercise first. Then after we do endurance exercise, we let ourselves recover, and then we do our strength exercise. Give ourselves a little bit more amino acids than we would normally take. So normally we take that 0.25 grams per kilogram body weight. But here, if we're going to do a lot of endurance exercise, now we're going to shift this up to 0.4 grams per kilogram body weight. And so now the resistance exercise after the endurance exercise and more amino acids, bang, mTOR complex 1 activity. Now we're going to get that long period of mTOR 1 activation. All right. So really what it's all about seems to be about figuring out how to overcome this molecular interaction. The metabolic stress is activating mTOR. The metabolic stress is inactivating mTOR. It's turning on AMP kinase. So we want it to turn on AMP kinase. We don't want it to shut down mTOR. And if we are going to have to shut down mTOR, we want to make sure that mTOR can be on as long as possible. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to increase the amount of amino acids we take in, and we're going to do our resistance exercise after our endurance exercise. So that's basically what I have here. It's just a summary. Taking 0.4 grams per kilogram body weight protein after resistance exercise increases muscle size and strength more than resistance exercise alone. And really, that's going to be important for this concurrent training. More protein is going to be needed because the ability of the amino acids to turn on mTOR is being blocked by the metabolic stress of your endurance exercise. And then performing strength and energy balance with minimum metabolic cost. What that means is energy balance. That means that after you do your endurance, you replenish your stuff. You have a small snack, you replenish your glycogen in that muscle. Now the metabolic stress of your endurance exercise has gone back down. And then you've turned off AMP kinase as well. And now you've got a situation where the metabolic stress is back down. And now what you're going to do is you're going to do a lot of resistance exercise. If you do that resistance exercise, you have to remember the more amino acids. Okay? And then the last thing is a simple one. Alcohol blocks mTOR 1 activity. So you could do your endurance and strength and have everything perfect, but if you're going to do your biggest strength exercise on Tuesday and Friday, and you're going to go out and you're going to drink heavily on Tuesday and Friday, it doesn't matter how much resistance exercise you do, after 4 drinks, you've shut off the whole system. This is something that we used in Australian rules football. They used to do their heavy lift on Friday afternoons. Then the guys that go out Friday night, they get drunk, Australians don't do anything halfway. So they would go out and they would have a good old time. They'd come back and they couldn't understand why their training wasn't causing them to increase muscle mass and strength. All we did was move the biggest lifting session to Wednesday. Suddenly, bang, everybody grew bigger muscles, stronger muscles, simply because you took advantage of the fact that you understood that alcohol could turn off mTOR. The goal of our strength training is to activate that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to shift our exercise away from our socialize, and that's going to give us the ability to grow our muscles maximally. All right, so we're going to do our endurance exercise first, using both low intensity and high intensity. We're going to get back into energy balance. That means we're going to just replenish our glycogen. We're going to do our resistance exercise against a heavy weight. We already talked about that. We do fewer we do fewer repetitions and we go to failure. That means that we have the stimulus to get our muscles big and strong. And then we're going to do, here we go, this 0.4 grams per kilogram body weight, this should say. It's down here, but it should be in both places. All right, so 0.25 if you're only doing 6 or fewer training sessions a week. But if you're going to train in an energy deficit, or you're going to be training more than 7 times a week, you need to increase your protein. All right? So what it looks like, what it looks like is this. This is what we did with one of the teams that we worked with. Is we figured out it's a football team, American football team. So what we figured is that they have to do their 2 hours of practice, and practice is a lot of repetitions, a lot of moving around, a lot of metabolic stress. And then they have to do their strength training so that they can be big and strong, and they can perform at a high level. So what are we going to do? We're going to come in and we're going to have them eating the 0.25 grams per kilogram body weight in each meal. We're going to have them do their endurance type exercise between 12:30 and 2:30. They're going to finish their practice. They're going to come in, rather than us giving them a lot of specialized performance nutrition for recovery. All we're going to do is we're going to send them up to the cafe